What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV. It is that time of the year again where we're going to react to our pre-season predictions. So before the season started, we picked our Spurs Young Player of the Season, Surprise Package of the Season, Flop, Best Signing, Top Goal Scorer, Top Assister, and where Spurs would finish in the league. So I'm interested to go back in time and see how wrong or how right we got it.
Yeah, we obviously did these predictions right at the beginning of the season before a ball was kicked. So it's interesting to see what our thought process was at this time, and I'm interested to see what our predictions were.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go first into our Player of the Season. It looks like we were both in agreement. It was Yves Bissouma.
Yeah, I think what we saw from him in pre-season, we were all very excited about him, weren't we? And we knew he was a good player. Obviously, we knew there was a player that we signed for Brighton still hadn't unlocked yet, and then once we saw him balling in pre-season, we were like, okay, this guy's going to absolutely cook. And then obviously beginning of the season, after we made this prediction, looked like a good prediction at that time, but didn't quite work out that way.
Exactly. Who could have predicted the fall off that Yves Bissouma did have? It was actually mad. Because a lot of people, I think majority of Spurs fans at that time, watching him play in pre-season, seeing how he did start the season, probably would have been in agreement. Mm-hmm. But Mickey van der Ven was the guy that won it. So yeah, I think it's a fair win for Mickey van der Ven. But I do think, a Cuti Romero or a Son definitely should have been in the running as well.
I think they were in the running. But yeah, van der Ven I think was just the most consistent, wasn't he? I think he never really let his standards drop throughout the whole season. So I think it was the right decision. Yeah, Bissouma really just let himself go after those first 10 games. And it's really alarming how he never got that form back, literally, throughout the whole season. Literally every game you are waiting and waiting and waiting. Never came, did it? No. So, it's a shame.
Yeah, so obviously at the time, I think it was a good prediction. But now it's all said and done. It's a terrible prediction.
Yeah, in hindsight, didn't quite work out the way we wanted it to, it's fair to say.
Young Player of the Season, we went for Destiny Udogie, and I think that's a fair shout. He's been really good throughout the season. We've missed him dramatically since he's been out. Mickey van der Ven obviously scooped that prize at the end of the season, but I think Udogie must have been up there.
Yeah, I think Udogie, obviously, it was probably between van der Ven, Udogie and Sarr, wasn't it? Who was going to get it, one of those three. Udogie, probably, if you take up until March time, he probably would have won it because he was...
Because van der Ven was out the team, yeah.
Van der Ven was out the team. He was really consistent. Obviously, clearly he picked up some sort of injury problem, didn't he? From March, April, May. And wasn't great the last 3 months of the season, I felt. Wasn't terrible. Didn't have a shocker, but wasn't as good as he was earlier in the season. And then obviously he had that injury, what was it, for the last 5 games?
Yeah.
Was ruled out. So van der Ven... I mean, I don't like one player winning both awards, but if anyone was going to do it, van der Ven probably deserved it. But Udogie had an amazing first season for a 20-year-old in your first season in the Premier League, considering he was out on loan last season. I think he's been brilliant, and I'm so excited where he's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Gary Neville, put him as left-back of the year in his Team of the Year selection. So he is getting the props he deserves. Has the official Team of the Year for the Premier League come out yet?
No, hasn't come out yet, but... I think Udogie's got a really good shout. I think it's probably more to do with there's a serious lack of left backs at the moment.
I think Gvardiol's probably going to get in it.
Gvardiol, but he had a really poor first half of the season. And second half he was great. Arsenal, don't really have a good left back at the moment. Liverpool, Robertson's been in and out of the team this season. So I think Udogie, when you're looking at left backs, Villa rotate a lot between Moreno and Digne. In terms of a player who plays every game and has been really consistent, I think Udogie's got a really good shout.
I've seen a lot of videos on social media from Arsenal fans where they've been asked, what player from Tottenham would you take? And every single one has said Udogie.
Yeah.
And he's probably the one in the back line for Spurs that 100% gets in their team.
I would say so.
Surprise of the season. Sim went for Lo Celso. I went for Richarlison. Look, Lo Celso's had a fairly positive season in terms of when he's got on the pitch, but he just hasn't got on the pitch enough. And I think definitely in the last 6-7 games, maybe even, I would say 3 months, he hasn't got the game time he deserved with a lackluster midfield, let's put it that way. Maddison hasn't really been performing. Bissouma hasn't been performing. Bentancur hasn't been fully fit. He hasn't been performing. Sarr has had a little bit of a drop-off as well. So, I mean, it's bemused me that Lo Celso hasn't got enough minutes in the tank. He keeps coming on last 3 minutes of games. And even in some of those games, he's created more than players have created in the whole 90 minutes. So I don't think he has been surprised this season, but I do think that he's deserved more minutes from what he's shown.
Definitely. When he started the season, right at the beginning, in the first 10 games, he was actually coming on and having some really good cameo appearances. Then, obviously, Maddison got injured and he stepped in. He looked like, he scored against City, didn't he? He scored against Villa. And it looked like, okay, actually, he can fill in that position. He's actually going to be quite good. And for one reason or another, I think he had one bad game. I can't remember who it was against. And then he just kind of got dropped and never really got his place back in the team, even though Maddison was still out. And then once Maddison came back, he had a few injuries. And then, or maybe that was it. Maybe he got injured and never got his place back once he came back from injury. And that's always been the story of Lo Celso's time at Tottenham. Injuries really holding him back, and I think this season was no different. The only thing is, this season I felt like, probably performance-wise, he was probably playing some of his best football he has in a Spurs shirt this season when he was on the pitch. But unfortunately, due to injury, didn't really make the impact I was hoping for. But when he was on the pitch, he did well. So it will be his last season at Spurs. I'm pretty sure about that. But unfortunately, this is a season what could have been again for Lo Celso.
This is one of the ones I'm annoyed about is Gio. I've kept mentioning it for the last few weeks that even when he has been fit and he's been on the bench, we have had a clear creative void in the middle of the park when Maddison hasn't been performing. And he should have come in. He should have stepped in a lot. And even when he's brought on, he's just brought on way too late in games. So that's one of the things I'm quite annoyed at Ange for this season. But is what it is. I went for Richarlison. A lot of people before the season say on the back of last season scoring only one Premier League goal, saying this guy won't score anywhere near 10 goals this season. This guy's a flop. This guy's this guy's that. And they had a good case at the end of last season, but now it's all said and done. 11 goals this season. Injuries have hampered him a lot. But I think he's had a fairly good season. I think he has got a big shout for surprise of the season.
Yeah, I think he's had a positive season. I think, obviously, going into pre-season with Kane leaving, obviously more was expected of him than last season, of course. One Premier League goal was ridiculous. He'd scored what? He scored a hat-trick in one of the pre-season games, didn't he? So
against the Lion City Sailors.
That was the Lion City Sailors. But still, we were expecting a bit of an improvement, and we did. I think we got that, and I think Richarlison had a pretty solid season. I don't think anyone can complain too much. I think whenever he's been on the pitch, we've probably looked at a better team for it. He gives us a bit of presence, and obviously his finishing ability has been there this season with those one-touch finishes. 11 Premier League goals is a decent return, I think, in 18 starts. So I think he's had a solid season. Again, his future up in the air. I don't know if he's done enough to definitely say he has to be here next season, but as well, I feel like he's done enough to suggest that he is here next season, that he can still make an impact and provide for the team.
Yeah, 11 goals in the Premier League. I think it's 12 overall, isn't it? Because he scored in that Fulham game in the Carabao Cup, but we went out on penalties. So do you think he has been the surprise, or would you put someone else forward for the surprise?
I think with 11 goals, I think if he'd have reached 15, I reckon that would have been a surprise. I think 11's I'm not shocked by that he could reach 11 goals. That's, for someone of Richarlison's quality, he should be getting that at least, in my opinion. In terms of who I think the actual surprise of the season, I guess Van de Ven probably gets that again because of just how, or maybe Vicario.
Vicario I'd agree with Vicario.
Gets shout because obviously we took the cheaper option. He's only had really a couple seasons in Serie A, and the fact he's probably been one of the better performing keepers in the league this season was probably a big surprise.
Yeah, I'd actually agree with that because if you go back to this video, I was talking about how him and Porro could be two of the flops of the season. So that's clear mud on my face when I'm talking about them two because they've been two of our standout performers this season. So I was completely wrong on that one. But yeah, I would go for Vicario because no one knew what to expect from him. And when we were going for David Raya, everyone was really distraught that we ended up getting Vicario, and he's been one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League this season. So yeah, Vicario gets surprise of the season from us. Flop of the season, Sim went for Manor Solomon. I went for Eric Dyer. Manor Solomon played 5 games at the beginning of the season. He's been out through injury since then. So, I mean, I find it hard putting him as a flop of the season just because he hasn't had the chance.
I get it, but if we sell him, he's been a flop, hasn't he? Let's be honest.
But yeah, but I just don't think he's had the chance, though.
Yeah, he hasn't. But at the end of the day, we signed a player on a free transfer who had a bad injury record, and then he got injured for the whole season. Yeah. So that it's probably a flop of a signing. In terms of,
when I look at flop, I look at performances. I don't look at not being able to get on. If you're not able to get on the pitch and you're fit, that's a different story. But if you're injured, then it's a bit unfair.
So has Lo Celso been a flop at Spurs?
Lo Celso, I mean, he's been in and out. He's been on loan. A lot of the times when he's been on the pitch, he hasn't been good. You talk about this season is the only real season he's had consistently good performances.
I don't think so. I think in his first season under Mourinho as well, he was pretty consistently good.
He was consistent for a certain period of the season, but not throughout the whole season.
Look, when I look at flop, when he played, he was okay. I don't think he was amazing. He had a couple of good games against Burnley and Sheffield. But obviously, it's such a small sample size. But what can I say? I think...
It's harsh, though.
It's harsh, but who's flopped more than him?
Who's flopped more than him? I'm trying to think. Brian Hill, maybe. Every time he's got on the pitch, he's been terrible. Who else have we got? I don't think any of the centre backs have flopped. Emerson could be up there.
I don't know. He had a couple of good games at centre back, didn't he?
Yeah, but Solomon had a couple of good games at left wing.
Yeah, I guess. True.
So I would prefer probably to put Emerson there because he's actually hampered us massively at times when he's come in. Yes, it has been out of position, so it's also a bit harsh. But I just think to put someone as flop of the season when they haven't played all season because of an injury, I think it's just super harsh.
As I say, we signed him with a bad injury record, then he got injured again. So I just feel like, in terms of I think if we do end up selling him, if he's got no chance to rectify, this season, which has been a write-off for him, if we end up selling him this summer, which our rumours are that we will, he's been a flop.
Who else has there been? Would you put Solomon then? Would you keep that as your flop of the season?
Probably. He's been injured the whole season. It hasn't helped us. So he has been a flop signing, unfortunately.
I think I would go Emerson.
And he's had a lot of setbacks as well. He keeps coming back and having setbacks. It's just, unfortunately, hasn't worked out.
It hasn't worked out.
I think injuries have to be taken into account when these things happen, especially if we're going to sell him. If we're going to sell him, then if we're going to keep him and then he has a chance to improve that, then I think there's a different scenario. But if we're going to sell him off the back of this season, then he has been a flop because we signed him on a free. We had a few games and he gets injured, and then that's it.
I'm not saying he hasn't been a flop, but what I'm saying is I don't think he's been the biggest flop this season because there's been players that have played and let us down consistently. He hasn't played. He's just let us down because he's been injured.
Okay.
I would say Højbjerg could be up there as well. He's looked good sometimes in cameos when coming on, but every time he started, we've lost, haven't we? And he's been poor.
One game, maybe.
Who else? Bissouma is definitely up there with the way he started the season and the mad drop-off that he showed. He's definitely been a big flop this season. Brian Hill, Emerson Royale. Why not put Ryan Sessegnon as flop of the season? You know what I mean? He hasn't got on the pitch at all. So I think there are a lot of players in the running for flop of the season this year. The one I'm going to go for is probably Emerson because I feel like every time he's stepped in, bar maybe one or two games, he's hampered us massively. Massively.
Yeah, and we knew. I kind of felt like going into the season, he wasn't going to fit the system, and I think that's pretty much what it proved to be, unfortunately for him. And I think he needs to be sold, and for the improvement of the team. You went for Eric Dyer, who was sold in January.
On the back of one game against Wolves. He came on against Chelsea, got that disallowed goal in the 4-1. But he's gone on to probably be the surprise of the season because he's been starring in the Bayern Munich backline.
Exactly. Very, very surprising.
But I'm going Emerson. You sticking with Solomon?
Yeah, I'm happy with our Solomon pick.
Best signing of the season. We both went for James Maddison. And at the start of the season, it looked like a spot on because he was one of the best players in the Premier League. Goal contribution after goal contribution. He got that injury, never really recovered from it this season. The last couple of games have been good, but I don't think he's done enough to be best signing of the season this year. I'd probably say Van der Ven.
Yeah, it has to be Van der Ven. I think the fact that he's only 40 million, he's 22 as well, so consistent, and literally from day one, he's been unbelievable. I think he has to be signing of the season nailed on.
Top goal scorer, we both said Richarlison coming into this season. We both backed him after scoring only one goal, but obviously it was Heung-min Son.
Yeah, absolutely blew him out of the water. We should have expected it to be Son. We should have expected him to get back to his best. But remember, when we made this prediction, Son was playing out on the left, wasn't he? Especially in pre-season. So I didn't expect him to obviously play too many games up front. That obviously Richarlison got injured and lost his form. Son moved there, banged in the goals, and that's what's got him top goal scorer. So if I would have known Son was going to play up front, I would have picked him, but didn't get that right.
Top assister, we both said James Maddison, and maybe if he wouldn't have got that injury after the first 10 games, it might have been him. But Brennan Johnson and Heung-min Son are tied on 10 assists each in the Premier League, which is a massive achievement for Brennan Johnson, first season in Spurs shirt. Do you reckon we never mentioned him in surprise of the season with 10 assists? Is that a surprise for you?
Is that a surprise? I mean, the fact that he's third in the league for assists is probably a surprise, I would say. That's fair. 15 goal contributions is a good return. Is he up there for surprise of the season? I don't think he's been more surprising for Vicario.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think he's had a solid first season. I don't think he's blown anyone away.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been exceptional, but it's been a good start, and it's been something for him to build on. 15 goal contributions. If he can up that to 20 next season, I mean, why not? And get an extra 5 next season with a bit more improving. I think he can manage that, and that's a really good return for a young winger. So.
Yeah. But yeah, unbelievable. Son getting our top assister, top goal scorer of the season.
Yeah, what a player.
In our predictions, we disrespected Son a little bit. We didn't put him in any of them, which is shocking for us. But yeah, I mean, it goes without saying why we put James Maddison in, especially with the way he started the season. So I think that's proved as a good prediction, but nobody could have envisaged the drop-off that he did have. So is what it is, I guess. And league finish is the only one that we got absolutely spot on, right?
Yeah, probably fifth. So when it's all said and done, we knew where we were going to finish.
Yeah.
We could tell. So we know our Spurs. That's the most important prediction.
Yeah.
Not bad. Obviously, we could have easily got that fourth with if we one result in that run in, or we would have snatched it, but we didn't get it. So, but I think fifth is probably a fair reflection of where we deserve to finish.
Yeah, I agree. So that is it. That is us reacting to our pre-season predictions. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think we got it dramatically, horribly wrong? Or do you think, can you see where we were coming from with some of those predictions? But like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.